and gentlemen, welcome to day one of Everything Electric Vancouver. Are you well? Good, excellent. I hope you're enjoying yourself so far. To those of you who were with us last year, welcome back. It's grown a bit. If this is your first day, if this is your first show, then you are most welcome. You're in for an absolute treat for the next 30 minutes because we've got a very interesting topic and some seriously interesting people to discuss it. We're doing a little bit of speculation into the future for the next 30 minutes. We're talking about who the top 5 car makers will be come 2030. Now, the thing about legacy car brands, your Chevrolets, your Hyundais, brands that have been around for decades and decades, some of them 100 years, is we all have a kind of clear idea about them in our head based on their history. We have a pretty clear sense of what that brand is about, what they do best. But one of the really fascinating byproducts of this energy transition is brands are changing their fortunes in the blink of an eye. Some are identifying this energy transition as an opportunity to leapfrog some of the brands that they've been lagging behind for decades by going big on electric early and are now reaping the rewards. Others have potentially been riding on reputation and not putting quite so much effort in and are now experiencing the consequences of that. What I'm saying to you is the top 5 car makers come 2030 are going to be very different to what they were 20 years ago, potentially very different to what they are today. So that's what we're going to be discussing for the next 30 minutes. I have some splendid panelists to help me through. If we could just go down the line, starting with John, and quickly introduce ourselves.
Hey folks, I'm John, Dr. Know-It-All on YouTube. So, hello, it's nice to see you all.
Hi.
Don't clap me, John.
Don't make his head too fat. I'm Sandy Munro. I have a YouTube channel as well called Munro Live.
Hi, my name is Regina Chen. I'm on both the World Car Awards and the Women Worldwide Car of the Year as one of the judging panels, along with all the judges from around the world.
Thank you all very much for being here. We don't have all the time in the world, so I think we'll just dive straight in, John. Has there ever been a more interesting time to cover this industry?
Wow. What would you say? It's interesting in the sense that it's not just, there was a period of time like maybe 2019, 2020, 21, 22, where it felt like it was just on a rocket ship. And the last couple of years, probably you all agree, it felt like it's been a little more wobbly in terms of like where exactly we're going. Sandy and I were just talking right before we got on stage that Sandy has made some predictions, all the way back, that it would go up for a while, then it would come back down again, then go back up. So I think we're in a little bit of a lull right at the moment. And I think that has a really big effect on exactly what this panel is going to talk about today, but I'll hold off on that.
A lot of people, Sandy, are quite anxious about the idea of making bold predictions for the future on the internet. You're not one of those people, happily. And you were just telling us stateside how you had actually foresaw this moment in time years ago where things would pick up and actually potentially just level out a little and then pick up again. Can you speak to us about why you saw that coming and why it's happening?
Okay, so I am old. How many people here are older than 75? Wow, that's amazing. Normally, no hands go up. But anyways, so I've gotten a chance to see things a lot. I started in the auto industry at 16, and I've seen a lot of bumps in the road. And I've seen a lot of innovation, and a lot of what everybody thought was the greatest times. What we're into right now, are the most exciting times technology-wise, and certainly the predictions for the future and whatnot. It's easy if you've got a long history. So for me, I watch things go up and down quite a bit. And let's go back to the 60s. You were saying, the auto companies and whatnot, they're the names we know, like Chevrolet and whatnot. Most people don't know that in the 60s, General Motors had 60% of the North American automotive market share. 60%. What do they got now? On a good day, 15. Things changed pretty rapidly when the Japanese showed up. I think that we're going to see, I hear all the predictions from the different presidents and whatnot, blah, 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 blah. That ain't going to make a difference at all. We're going to see a bump in the road simply because about 30 or 40% of the population knows that something has got to change. And so they've driven it up, and they've talked to their politicians, and it came up really fast. And I said, you know what, that's going to be a problem. And because the politicians are going to get clobbered by the general industry and whatnot, then it's going to go down, and it's going down quickly. I mean, I've heard some predictions like dramatic, right? It'll go down. But then what's going to happen is about 20 or 30% of the rest of the population will join the 40% of the population and say, I don't like that idea, and it'll go back up again. So by 2030, I said 50% of the cars will be either a hybrid or pure EV, and I'm sticking by it. I'm pretty sure it's going to happen, and we'll see a few more bumps in the road. But at the end of the day, I'm right a lot. Yeah.
Sandy Munro there, ladies and gentlemen, he's right a lot. Progress is never linear, right? And I think actually part of the reason we're seeing this kind of stagnation is perhaps that we've kind of passed through the early adopter phase. Those of us who really want electric cars are in them now, and it's kind of a question of making it make sense for everyone. Everyone, you know, people who don't even care about cars, just make it the obvious choice. Regina, let's get stuck into this then. Let's talk about specific brands who are really impressing us, brands who we look at and think, you've really set yourself up for a great next 5-10 years in terms of electrification. Where would you like to start?
I was just walking around downstairs, and if you want to know who will be the top 5 car makers in 2030, just go downstairs and check it out. So 2 brands actually stand out very, very much. First of all is the Rivian, and then Polestar. So we have that conversation before. I think Rivian is doing very, very well. The R1T and R1S is a great car. And the R1S already in their generation, like second generation. Consider that they've only been around for what, 2.5 years. So they are a company that they're young startup company, but they move really, really fast compared to those traditional car company that we have seen in the last 100 years. So Rivian is absolutely number 1 on my list. And then the other brand that I would like to talk about, about the Rivian, I really like the R3. I think that's smaller. I think we had a similar conversation last year. The market is looking for more smaller EV SUV, and I think the R3 just the product that the market is looking for. So the second brand that I think will be the top 5 car makers in 2030 is Polestar. I like what they did with first they come up with the Polestar 2. If you drive around in Vancouver, you will see a lot of Polestar 2. And the Polestar 3 is coming to the market. I will have an opportunity to test drive it next week in the beautiful Victoria. And that's, of course, it's a crossover. And then if you guys have checked out downstairs, they also have a very, very cool open top BST concept. I'm really excited about the Polestar 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So these 2 brands are top of my mind for the upcoming car makers in 5 years.
I think that there's a wonderful place to start there. We'll get to Tesla, don't you worry about that, sir. Oh, we'll get to Tesla. Isn't it interesting, by the way, that the first 2 brands that Regina mentioned are brands that didn't exist a handfuls of years ago? That's quite interesting in and of itself. It's so fascinating watching these gigantic old brands trying to kind of steer the big ship in a new direction. Whereas new brands can just come in and go, hey, we just do electric. We've never done anything else before. Let's expand on that then. Rivian, John, a rare thing in that it's a new car brand that didn't go under in like 2 years. You'd have to be insane to start a new car brand, but they are a rare, heartwarming success story, are they not?
I think so, and I think, I mean, like I just saw the R3 and it is very impressive. Like, and it was, the other ones are just a little big for my taste, just for my own personal use. But the R3, I was like, as soon as that comes out, I'm going to give that a hard look. And the fact that it has North American charging standard now, which is a big deal. I think they're moving in the right direction, and I'm very excited about them. I think the elephant in the room, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, is China. They're not just the elephant in the room, they're the elephant on the planet at this point. And I think that they are going to have a major impact on Western. Like, we're a little bit isolated in North America right now. My friends in Australia, people in Europe, they're already seeing a lot of Chinese brands. Polestar is effectively Chinese, even though not officially. Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying that it's a little bit of a hidden thing. But anyway, I think that we are going to see a massive influx of Chinese vehicles. No matter what the political situation is in the US and Canada and everything, it could slow it down a little bit, could speed it up, but it's kind of inevitable. It's like a giant wave that's coming towards us.
And very much already taking place in Europe, as you described. It's pretty commonplace to see Chinese brands on the road in the UK now. Sandy, of course, there's pretty major news in Canada in the recent weeks regarding a gigantic tariff on Chinese EVs. How do you feel about that?
Well, if I am elected, okay, so I don't really care for the current prime minister, and I didn't like his dad either. So it's probably best that I tiptoe around that one. But I will tell you that the people who say that they're going to do these giant tariffs and they're going to show them who's boss, you do know that there's billions of people in China, and they have all of the techniques and technologies that we need, and they have most of the materials that they're going to need. And when you go and try and or let me rephrase that, if you kick an elephant in the leg, chances are good you're going to get crushed. And crushed is what's going to happen no matter who says what. The only way that you could try and keep the Chinese out is if the United States killed the free trade agreement and then put a great big giant wall around the US. A big giant wall that'll keep everything out. And if they do that, isolationism hasn't really worked out in the past for anybody, and you ultimately lose. Here's the deal, and again, I'm old, I don't give a rat's ass. So I know for sure that right now Mexico is overflowing with investment from Chinese companies. Okay, if Canada wants to hold the line, well, that's good. I don't know when the next election is, but hopefully it's soon. Because the more you try, somebody once told me a long time ago, if you want to find out what happens when you want to try and crush an idea, put a mashed potatoes in the middle of your hand. And the more you squeeze, the more you lose. So, does that answer the question? Without going right out and mentioning any names?
It certainly does. It's an extremely complicated problem, right? You can certainly see why governments would want to try and give their own local car brands a fighting chance against the kind of superpower that is Chinese car brands, sort of under one umbrella. But equally, as you've quite rightly pointed out, guess who does all the batteries that go into all the different brands' cars? Guess who does all the refining for all the batteries that goes into everyone's electric cars? And by the way, brands like Mercedes massively rely on China for business, right? They're one of the big brands that import like luxury European and American goods. So they might just put a tariff of their own back on, and that would make it quite complicated.
It might be worth even pointing out that Mercedes and other companies like that have been very much at the forefront of saying, please don't do these tariffs, because they know which side of the bread their butter is on, whatever.
Quite. Right, we'll stick a pin in that for the time being. I want to get back to the thing that the panel is actually about. So it's always a good time for a good panel when you get sidetracked. Back to the brands that we think are going to be really big by 2030 then. Regina, we heard what about Tesla from a gentleman in the crowd a moment ago. It sort of goes without saying, Tesla was the story of the 2010s, automotively speaking. Where are they now?
So Tesla actually had the 50% of the EV sales right now in Canada, and the rest of the 50% EV sales is all other brands combined. So Tesla is not going anywhere. But in 5 years, when more and more traditional or developing brand, as well as the startup brand like Rivian and the Polestar that we just talked about, they will have more EVs coming out, they will have more choices. Therefore, the 50% market share probably not going to sustain in the long run. So absolutely, we have to take consideration into other brands that has been in the business for so long, and they also have more refine in the manufacturing process. Like the third brand that I would like to talk about, who will make the top 5 car makers in 2030, which is Kia. So I got the opportunity to visit their design studio in Nanyang, South Korea last year, and I have seen some of the future products they have in store, and it's really, really amazing. So right now in the market, the all-new Kia EV9 is actually won the Best World Car Award 2024, and also the Supreme, the big winner of Women's World Car of the Year. So they already have the product that the car critics love a lot, and it reflects on the car sales. Of course, the award-winning EV6, and I also very excited to see the upcoming EV3, which right now they are doing the global launch in Korea today.
I was there driving it just 2 weeks ago. I can confirm it's pretty good. Just to pick up on a few things that you said there then. Tesla, spoiler alert, not going anywhere anytime soon. Still very much a huge influence in the industry. I think it's probably fair to say that their dominance is going to shrink in the coming years, but I sort of view that as a good thing. I think it's kind of because all the other brands are just getting better, not least because Tesla kind of dragged the whole industry about 10 years forward. So we owe them an awful lot. And incidentally, still some of the best electric cars out there. Kia and Hyundai, for me, is the poster child for how to do it right. As a legacy brand with a long history of making petrol cars, how to look at electrification not as a pain in the arse, but as an opportunity, and an opportunity that they've seized with both hands. John, do you agree? And if so, what have they done so right?
I do. I think that they've been, for a legacy brand, they felt very much kind of in the realm of like Rivian, Tesla. They felt more like a startup when it came to shifting to electric vehicles. And so I think they jumped on that a lot faster. The interesting thing is that we're all not talking about like VWs, about GMs, about, I mean, we will, but they're not going to be in that top 5 list. I pretty much guarantee that they are not going to be in that group. I think, personally, I think BYD and Tesla definitely. After that, it gets a little more murky. Maybe Geely, could be Kia, Hyundai. I don't honestly, personally think that Rivian is going to make the top 5. I think they'll be in business and doing great, but they feel slightly more niche to me. But yeah, the world is going to change radically. I mean, the car brands that are the ones that most consumers think about right now as the top 5 in North America. I think if you go to other places in the world, they think differently. But already in Mexico, we've seen, look again, a flood of Chinese vehicles in Mexico. Clearly, they're going to try to work the North American Free Trade Agreement and build cars. China is going to try to build cars in Mexico and ship them to the U.S. without much in the way of tariffs. So, you know, I just think it's inevitable that we're going to be looking at a major switching of who's in the top 5 in the next 6 years.
Yeah. So if I had to pick the top 5. Number 1 would be BYD. We never mentioned anything about them, but they are the giant when it comes to automotive, especially when you're looking at EV. They are going to be huge, and they are dominating the market in China. Well, let me rephrase that. In the whole of the Far East, BYD is crushing it everywhere. They're going to be manufacturing in Mexico, and they'll take over the South American market without any problem whatsoever. So they're my number 1 pick for being number 1. Up there is probably also going to be Toyota. Toyota, Sako-san, the guy that finally they got rid of the old man and put him in, and he is wicked smart. I met him a long time. Many people don't know, but Munro is actually an engineering firm, and we design cars and whatnot. So we worked with Toyota for a long time, and that's where I met him. He's wicked smart, and he knows, he's politically astute, so he knows how to dance around the Toyota family. Toyota is a car, Toyota is the family that owns Toyota. Anyhow, I believe that they're going to magically survive. I believe that Tesla.
Expand on that for us, Sandy, because I'm quite surprised to hear you say Toyota. They're kind of on my list of laggards. I mean, for a long time, that's a brand that was actually lobbying against electric vehicles and kind of seemingly betting big on hydrogen, which they appear to have done a bit of a 180 on. So what do you see that gives you confidence that they're going to really catch up?
They got rid of the family member.
Fair enough.
And as soon as that fat old man got out of the way, guess what? Things happened, and that's what's. It takes a while to steer. Even Toyota, which is wicked fast from a big OEM standpoint, he's moving the company in the right direction. But I will tell you that there are other ones that are big, that are also that are going to suffer greatly. So I mentioned BYD and I mentioned Toyota. Tesla, I believe, will be in the top 5. Geely, who owns Polestar, who owns Volvo, who owns a lot of stuff, I believe that they're going to be in the top 5. And one that we haven't mentioned at all is Chery. Chery is an absolutely crazy company. As some of you might have seen on my show, we've talked a lot about gigafactories and stuff like that. That is all now chump change, because Chery came out. Those things were the big castings that I talked about. Those are 9,000 ton casting machines. They're huge. Nobody even had one of those 4 or 5 years ago. Nobody had one. Now we've got them here and there. Well, Chery is putting out their new vehicle, and it's a one-piece casting for the whole lower car, 16,000 tons. That machine will be bigger than this room by about another half. That's ponderous. And I've seen the output with the puck in place and everything, like all the sprues and gates and everything. I about peed my pants. I'm telling you what, Chery will kick some serious tail, because half of your body shop will disappear. So for me, it's going to be BYD, Tesla, Chery, Geely, and Toyota. Those are the ones that I think will be the top 5.
It's a really striking list. Also striking is the lack of mention for any US brands in this conversation so far. Aside from Tesla, that's very true. I was sort of referring to the legacy
Actually,
brands there.
Tesla is the most American brand, period. It's the most North American brand for sure.
Very, very true.
Yeah.
General Motors, last time I was in North America, didn't have a huge amount to show for themselves, but downstairs they've got a bunch of awesome looking new EVs. Things are starting to move along quite promisingly for General Motors. Would you agree, Regina?
Oh, absolutely. Cadillac is on my top 5 list as well. So I'm not sure if you guys have seen the recent press release or the announcement by Cadillac, the Soleil convertible design concept, and also the opulent Velocity, combine of performance and luxury together. And of course, all the whole lineup of, and with the name IQ, like the Vista, the Celestiq, and Escalade IQ, they are all coming within the next 18 months. So at least the models that I know that Cadillac will be bringing out to the market, besides the 2 concepts that I just mentioned, at least 5 models. So Cadillac is definitely a brand that shouldn't be forgotten.
Absolutely. And big wafty luxury stuff just suits electrification so well. It's even more quiet and comfortable. John, a word on Ford, perhaps? A word on Ford, who I'm a massive fan of as a brand, but we've not seen a huge amount so far.
Oh gosh. I don't know what to say about Ford, because I actually personally like what Jim Farley's doing, and I think he's trying to go the right direction. And I am waiting a little bit to see what their Skunk Works is doing, because he said that he doesn't even basically have the keys to the office to get in there. But my fear is that they're just losing so much on their electric division that what they've done is they've pulled back. And we started off the panel talking about the stumble, not stumbles, but variability of this. So we went up for a while, we pulled back. You see all of these legacy auto manufacturers suddenly going like, oh, we're going to slow down the move to electrification. I think nothing could be worse right now. And hearing Ford say that makes me really concerned, because they need to be going gangbusters to be able to become, not lose $50,000 per vehicle, but to break even and start making money. Because when the next uptick happens, which it will, they're going to get left behind. And so they need to be pushing, not backing off right now. So that's what I think about Ford. Yeah.
Well, I will tell you, in my estimation, the Rivian is a great little like sport truck. It's the best off-road vehicle I've ever had in my life, and I've been driving Wranglers since I was 13. And my last car before I went electric was a Wrangler and a Rubicon, and I liked that kind of work. And Rubicon died the day that I got a hold of the R1 pickup from Rivian. And I believe that they will do quite well. They're going to be in the top 5, but they're going to do quite well in that sector. But when you talk about a truck that's going to be for a working man or a working person, whatever, somebody who's in construction, someone who's got a farm, somebody's got whatever, then there is no comparison. The F-150 Lightning saved Munro and Associates from damn near going out of business because we used it to heat and light our factory. We have a 50,000, so that'd be about 5,000 square meters, but 50,000 square foot facility. And we had a whole bunch of people that flew in from all over the world for a convention we were having, and we lit the place and ran the computers and all that other stuff. We did that with a Ford F-1 Lightning. 5 days. 5 days running back and forth to different charging systems because our factory, or the little town we're in, Auburn Hills, didn't have any power. That was amazing. Taking this thing out on the road, when I can plug in a welder and weld with it, when I have got my own compressor built in, everything that you'd possibly need or want in a working truck, that's what Ford's got. The thing that people don't realize is that Ford quietly has taken over the electric police car market. They own quite a bit of the normal market for police cars, but right now they're selling about I don't know, 600 or 700 to 1 for police cars, in electric police cars. So I think they're hanging back a bit. But the real thing that I worry about with Ford is that they listen too much to Wall Street, and those people know nothing and care about nothing. All they care about is the next bonus at the end of the quarter. That's all they care about. So listening to them is a bad situation. But what about you? Where are you on the Ford front?
I like the Ford Mark E. I like some of their products, but I think Cadillac come up with more interesting products as I can see today. So I don't know about Ford.
Well, my concern with Ford, certainly in Europe, is that they were renowned for this as like small, affordable cars. That was their legacy in Europe for a long time. My first car was a Ford Fiesta, a little tiny hatchback. That's what I learned to drive in. And they appear to have kind of moved away from that affordable end of the market. They've actually discontinued their smallest models in Europe. And I think it's all part of kind of streamlining their output. But I do miss seeing small, affordable cars from Ford, and I hope that they make the return. F-150 Lightning is a glorious contraption, though. I will say that. We've got 90 seconds left. I'd love to take one really good question from a member of the audience to finish up the panel.
No
Anything
pressure.
at all, really.
No pressure.
Anyone got a good question to finish on? Yes, sir.
Yes, thank you. This is directed to Sandy, I'd appreciate it. If the average ICE car versus an EV has 10 times more moving parts, if not more.
More like 10,000, yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's confirmed what I always thought, but I didn't want to, anyway. So if that's the case, my biggest beef or problem that I have is a hybrid that has not only the multiple issues of an ICE car, but now you're going to add issues or less moving electric. So in other words, what I'm saying is, what makes, in your opinion, what makes a hybrid valuable? That's my question.
Here's my answer. Hybrids will be the pet rock of the future.
There's an analogy for everybody who's over a certain age. Yeah.
I've never understood, specifically the plug-in hybrid, I have never understood. For me, the thing about hybrids is, if you live somewhere where charging an electric car is simply not possible, then a mild hybrid which just has a little electric motor to kind of make your ICE car more fuel efficient, sure, why not? But in terms of plug-in hybrids, if you have the means to plug, just get an EV, right?
I'm totally mystified by hybrids. Totally mystified. I know that some people would want to sit on the edge and say, well, I just want to have the safety and blah blah blah. Well, you're going to get the safety. You're going to get all the maintenance problems. You're going to get all the other contraption problems because now when you go to a hybrid, you're talking about multiples and multiples of backup systems and whatnot because now you've got an engine talking to generators, talking to other inverters and whatnot for the electric motors, talking to body control modules. It turns into like ridiculously complicated. I don't understand it. I've said the little stuff about the pet rock of the future is a hybrid. If I had one recommendation for everybody in the room, don't buy a hybrid. You'll regret it in the not too distant future. Certainly by 2030.
We are out of time, but we'll take one more very quick question. Why not?
Just quickly to Sandy as well. With this gigacasting, so when they change from a model to another model, if there's variations that have to happen to the underfloor, is that a massive, not a tooling issue, but a conversion issue from model to model? Like, would that hurt the company's profitability on the model if they need to change anything?
The short answer is no. I should mention too that I'm a tool maker. Apart from, that's how I started. So I kind of understand what you do with molds, dies, and things like that. Mm-hmm. And in essence, what I would do is I would just burr out the areas that I may need to modify. So it means basically you use a thing called a stellite tool, and you make a few holes, or you weld it up with hard weld, and away you go. Because most of the time, if you look outside, if you go downstairs, you'll have a look at two cars. They're right beside each other. The one on the right is a VW bus, and the one on the left is a Ford Transit van. The whole undercarriage is exactly the same. It's the MEB platform. Okay. I can put whatever I want on the top of a platform. There's no big deal there. You can put any kind of canopy you want, any kind of top edge you want. But the undercarriage is kind of like, you don't want to change that a whole lot too often. If you have to, though, it's not so hard to do if you're using a casting. Much more difficult if you're having to change about 200 or 300 little teeny pieces of stamped steel that have to be welded together. So it's no big deal.
Thanks. Well, this has been delightful. Thank you to my panelists for their insight. Could we have a huge round of applause? If you have a question that you're too shy to ask, come and have a chat with the stage side. Otherwise, enjoy your day. Thank you.